Nera-ku had not slept in 40 hours, and she was starting to lose track of which corridor she was standing in. The docking bay on Korvai station smelled wrong. It always smelled a little wrong now, ever since the fever started, but tonight it was worse. Underneath the usual metal and recycled air, there was something sharper. Something like burnt sugar. The medics said that was just how the disease smelled once it got into the lungs. Nera had started to hate that smell the way you hate a sound you cannot stop hearing. She checked the arrivals board again. The human relief ship was still marked as inbound, still 11 minutes out, the same 11 minutes it had said for the last 20. She pressed her palm flat against the cold rail in front of her and made herself breathe slowly, the way her mother had taught her when she was small and scared of the dark. She was not small anymore. She was 26 years old, a mid-level logistics officer for the Concord Relief Office, and she had been given the job of meeting the human doctor because nobody more senior wanted to be the one standing here if this went badly. Her comm chimed. It was her mother. Any word on Oving? Her mother asked, before Nera had even said hello. He's stable, Nera said. The night shift told me an hour ago. Stable doesn't mean better, Mama. It just means he hasn't gotten worse. Stable is something, Nera agreed, and did not say the other thing she was thinking, which was that the Concord doctors had used the word stable for 6 patients last week, and 4 of them were dead now. Her brother Oving was 14. He had gotten the grey patches on his arms 3 days ago, the same soft ash-colored bruising that always came first, and by the second day he could not keep food down, and by this morning he could not sit up without help. Nera had seen him for 11 minutes total in the last 3 days, through a quarantine window, because the fever moved between people faster than anyone understood, and nobody was allowed near a confirmed case, who did not have to be. They are bringing in a human doctor, Nera said. Tonight. I am meeting the ship. There was a pause on the line. Her mother's voice, when it came back, had the careful flatness of someone choosing not to say what she actually thought. A human doctor, her mother repeated. Concord approved it. Overseer Thal signed off on it himself, which means he didn't have any better ideas left. You be careful, Nera. They are not the ones who brought the fever, Mama. Nobody knows where the fever came from. That's not what people are saying in the lower ring. Nera did not answer that, because she had heard what people were saying in the lower ring too, and she did not want to repeat it out loud in a public docking bay. The human cargo route ran through 3 systems that had all reported early cases before Korvai did. It was not proof of anything. It was the kind of thing that felt like proof to people who were frightened and tired and needed somewhere to put the fear. The arrivals board changed. 2 minutes. Nera straightened her uniform collar, which did not need straightening, and watched the docking clamps swing into position around a ship that was smaller than she had expected. Human ships in the trade lanes were usually big, blunt, overbuilt things, the kind of vessel that looked like it had been designed by someone who assumed it would eventually need to survive being shot at. This one was compact and quick-looking, with a name stenciled near the airlock in human lettering she couldn't read. The airlock cycled. A woman stepped out. She was human, obviously, which Nera had seen exactly 4 times in her life before tonight, always at a careful diplomatic distance. This woman was close enough to see clearly. She was of middle height, dark-skinned, with close-cropped hair going grey at the temples, and she was carrying 2 cases that looked heavy enough that Nera almost offered to help before remembering that touching anything from the human ship was against the current protocol. The woman set the cases down, looked around the bay once, and found Nera's eyes directly, the way Yelloth children were taught not to do with strangers because it read as a challenge. Nera had learned enough about humans to know it wasn't meant that way. It was just how they looked at people. You're my liaison, the woman said. It wasn't a question. Nera-ku. Concord Relief Office. Nera hesitated, then extended her arm in the human gesture she had practiced twice in a mirror and never actually used. "You doctor. Marin Osei." The woman shook her hand, brief and firm, and picked her cases back up before Nera could decide whether that had gone correctly. "How many active cases as of tonight?" 211 confirmed. 43 critical. Fatality rate. Nera's throat tightened slightly. Just under 1 in 3, once it reaches the critical stage. Dr. Osei's expression did not change, but something behind her eyes did, some small internal recalculation. "That's worse than what was in the report I got 6 hours ago." "It's gotten worse in 6 hours." "Then let's not stand here," the doctor said, and started walking toward the transport corridor without waiting to see if Nera followed. Nera followed. She had 100 questions and swallowed all of them, because the one thing she noticed, walking half a step behind a human doctor, who had been awake for a journey Nera didn't know the length of and was already moving like she had somewhere urgent to be, was that this woman did not look tired. She looked like someone who had decided tiredness was a problem to solve later. The medical quarter on Corvi Station was built for calm, methodical Yelloth medicine, and it showed. Every consultation room had 2 waiting periods built into its design, one for the patient to describe symptoms and one for the physician to confer privately with a review board before recommending treatment. Yelloth medicine did not move quickly. It was not supposed to. A misdiagnosed treatment plan on a Concord world could take years to correct, because most Yelloth illnesses developed slowly, and the culture of care had grown up around that fact for 400 years. The ashen fever did not care about any of that. Dr. Osei stood in the observation gallery above the critical ward, looking down through the glass at 43 patients in isolation beds, and Nera watched her count them without moving her lips. "I need full case histories on every one of these," the doctor said. "Not summaries. Full histories in order of symptom onset. That will take the review board most of tomorrow to compile." "I don't have tomorrow." Dr. Osei turned from the glass. "Nera, I'm going to say something and I need you to understand I'm not being rude. I need you to understand I'm being honest, because I think honesty is faster than politeness right now, and we don't have time for the slow way." Nera felt something tighten in her chest. "Say it. Whatever treatment protocol your board has been running, it isn't working. 1 in 3 critical patients is dying. That number should be improving over time, as you learn the disease's pattern. Is it improving?" Nera thought about lying. She had been told, in a briefing before the docking, to project confidence to the human doctor, to represent Concord's medical program as capable and in control. She thought about oving, stable not better in a quarantine bed 4 corridors from here. "It's gotten worse," she said. 2 weeks ago it was 1 in 5. Something moved across Dr. Osei's face, quick and gone. "Show me your isolation protocols." They spent the next hour walking the ward. Dr. Osei asked questions that Nera didn't always have answers to and that the ward physicians, when she found one, answered with visible discomfort, because the questions cut past the ordinary structure of Yelloth clinical reasoning and went somewhere the review boards hadn't sanctioned going yet. How fast does the fever mutate between hosts? Has anyone sequenced it from more than one patient? Why is there only one isolated strain sample in the entire station's records? Because sequencing requires board approval for each sample, the ward physician told her, an older Yelloth man named Corval, who had the exhausted patience of someone who had explained this several times already to several people. The process ensures. How many people have died while that process ensured something, Dr. Osei said, not unkindly, but not gently either. Corval didn't answer. Later, in a supply room that had been cleared out for the doctor's temporary use, Nera watched Dr. Osei unpack the 2 cases she had carried off the ship. They contained equipment Nera didn't recognize, most of it small and dense and humming faintly when it powered on. Field sequencer, the doctor said, catching Nera's look. It's not as precise as a hospital unit. It's fast. I can have a full genetic map of this thing in about 6 hours instead of 6 days. The review board hasn't authorized independent sequencing. I know. Dr. Osei. Marin, the doctor said. If we are going to work together, you can call me Marin. And I know what I just said. I'm not asking your board's permission, because your board has had 2 weeks and the fatality rate has gone up, not down. She looked at Nera directly, the same unflinching look from the docking bay. I'm asking you. Do you want me to wait for permission, or do you want me to start working? Nera thought of her brother. She thought of the grey patches spreading up his arms, of the sound he'd made trying to breathe through the quarantine window 2 days ago, a sound she had not told her mother about because there was no reason to make her mother hear it twice. Start working, Nera said. Marin nodded once, like the answer had never really been in doubt, and pulled the first sequencer case open. By the 3rd day, Nera had stopped going home. She slept in 2-hour blocks on a cot the medical quarter kept for overnight staff, and she woke each time to the low hum of Marin's equipment and the sight of the doctor still at the same bench, sometimes in a different position, but always awake. You have to sleep, Nera said, on the 3rd morning, watching Marin rub her eyes with the heel of her hand and keep working anyway. I will. When I have something. Marin didn't look up from the display in front of her, a shifting map of colored strands that meant nothing to Nera, and clearly meant a great deal to the doctor. The fever mutates inside a single host, not just between hosts. That's why your board's isolated sample kept producing inconsistent treatment results. They were treating 3 different versions of the same disease and didn't know it. Nera sat down slowly. That's not possible. Yelloth pathogens don't mutate that fast within a single body. The immune response would need to. It's not a yelloth pathogen, Marin said. Or it wasn't, originally. Best guess, working from the sequence, it's zoonotic. Something that crossed over from an animal reservoir somewhere in this system and picked up traits it shouldn't have because it's moving through a population that's never built any resistance to it. That's why it's fast and why it's vicious. It's new to everyone. It doesn't know yet what it's supposed to do, so it's doing everything at once. Everyone in the lower ring thinks it came off a human cargo ship. Marin finally looked up. It didn't. I can prove that from the sequence alone, there's no cross-species vector marker anywhere in it, but I understand why people are looking for someone to blame. Fear does that. It's not a Yelloth trait, or a human trait. It's just what fear does. Overseer Thal arrived an hour later, with 2 members of the review board and an expression that told Nera this was not going to be a friendly visit. Dr. Osei. Thal was an old Yelloth administrator, grey-skinned with the deep vertical creases along his jaw that marked advanced age in his species, and he had the voice of a man who had spent 40 years being listened to and expected to keep being listened to. I understand you have been conducting unauthorized sequencing work. I have. That work falls outside the scope of the Concord Relief Agreement that brought your ship to this station. I understand that. Then you understand it needs to stop, pending review. Marin set down the instrument in her hand, carefully, the way someone sets down something breakable when they are trying not to throw it. Overseer Thal, may I ask you a question? Thal's jaw tightened, but he nodded. How many of your critical patients have died since I arrived 3 days ago? The silence stretched. One of the board members, a younger woman, answered quietly. 9. How many died in the 3 days before that, under the existing protocol? 14. I'm not telling you my methods are approved, Marin said. I'm telling you they are working, and I'm asking you to let me finish before you decide whether to stop me. I think you already know what 14 versus 9 means, And I think it's the reason you're standing here instead of sending someone else to say this. Thal was quiet for a long moment. Nera watched him look past Marin, at the display full of colored strands, at data he probably couldn't read any better than Nera could. You have until tomorrow morning, Thal said finally. One full review board session. If you cannot show them something real, this stops, and you and your ship will be restricted to the docking bay pending a formal inquiry into procedural violations. That's fair, Marin said. Thal left. The board members left with him. Nera let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. That was not fair, Nera said. One day. You need a cure, not a sequence map, and you want it by tomorrow morning. I don't need a cure by tomorrow morning, Marin said, already turning back to her bench. I need a treatment. There's a difference, and it's the difference we are going to use. Nera did not fully understand what Marin did that night, and she would spend a long time afterward trying to explain it to people who understood it even less than she did. What she understood was this: the human body, when it encountered a new pathogen, did something Yelloth bodies did not do. It built a response fast, sometimes messily, sometimes wrong, but fast, and it kept a kind of running record of every threat it had ever faced, layered on top of itself over generations. Marin called it an immune memory. She said human medicine had spent centuries learning how to read that memory, and, more importantly, how to share it. A treatment built from one recovered patient's blood could, with the right processing, teach another patient's body how to fight the same threat, faster than that body could have learned on its own. We don't have a recovered patient, Nera said, at 2 a.m, watching Marin prepare something at the bench that involved her own arm, and a needle Nera did not want to look at too closely. No, Marin agreed. But I've been exposed to worse than this and came out the other side, and my blood carries markers this fever hasn't seen before. It's not a perfect match. It won't be a cure. But it might be enough of a head start that a Yelloth immune system can finish the job on its own, if it gets a running start instead of starting from nothing. You're going to use your own blood. I'm going to try. Marin looked at the vial filling slowly in front of her, unbothered in a way that made Nera's stomach turn. It's not as dramatic as it sounds. This is a fairly small amount. I'll be fine. And if it doesn't work? Then we've lost a night, and I'll try something else. Marin capped the vial, and set it into the small processing unit humming on the bench beside her. Nera. I need to ask you something, and I need you to think carefully before you answer, because I think you already know what I'm going to ask. Nera's chest went tight. She already knew. Oving, Marin said gently. I looked at his case file 3 days ago, when I was reviewing critical patients. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to make this personal for you before I had anything real to offer. I have something real now. It's not tested. It's not approved. I can't promise you it will work, and if it doesn't, that failure will be on me and nobody else. But I would like your permission to try it on your brother first. Nera stared at the processing unit, at the faint red glow of something that a few hours ago had been inside another species' body entirely, and thought about the sound Oving had made through the quarantine window. Why him first, she made herself ask. Why not whoever is closest to critical? Because I need someone I can watch closely for the next 6 hours, someone whose family will tell me the truth about how he's actually responding, not the version they think I want to hear. Marin met her eyes. That's not a clinical answer. It's the honest one. I could give you a clinical answer instead, but I told you 3 days ago that honesty is faster. Nera thought about her mother's voice on the comm. You be careful, Nera. Do it, she said. Oving's fever broke 9 hours later. Nera was in the room when it happened, standing outside the quarantine glass with her mother, both of them watching the monitor readouts climb and then, slowly, begin to fall. The grey patches on his arms did not disappear. Marin had warned them they wouldn't, not right away. But his breathing eased into something that no longer sounded like a fight, and near dawn he opened his eyes and asked, in a small confused voice, whether he had missed school. Nera's mother cried in a way Nera had never seen her cry before, quiet and complete, both hands pressed against the glass. By mid-morning, word had spread through the medical quarter, and by midday it had spread through the station, and Marin stood in front of the full review board with data Nera still couldn't fully read, but that made every Yelleth physician in the room go very still. One patient, Overseer Thal said, when she finished presenting. One recovery is not evidence of a treatment, Dr. O say. It could be luck. It could be the natural course of the disease in a particularly resilient patient. It could be, Marin agreed. That's a fair objection. I'd like your board's permission to run a controlled trial. 20 patients, treated with the same serum, monitored against 20 untreated patients at the same stage of illness. If it's luck, we'll see that clearly within 2 days. If it's not, we'll see that too. The board deliberated for 3 hours. Nera waited outside the chamber with a feeling she didn't have a good word for, something that sat somewhere between hope and dread, because hope, she was learning, could hurt just as much as fear if you let yourself hold it too tightly. The trial was approved. 18 of the 20 treated patients recovered. 2 did not respond and were moved to alternate treatment, neither of them worsening as a result. Of the 20 untreated patients, monitored under identical conditions as the control, 7 died within the same window. The number moved through Corvi station faster than the fever had. Nera heard it repeated in the corridors, in the docking bay, in the lower ring where 2 weeks ago people had been whispering about human cargo ships. 18 of 20. She heard it said with wonder, and she heard it said, in a few places, with something closer to suspicion, a quiet undercurrent that made her uneasy even in the middle of the relief. She found out what that undercurrent meant 3 days later, when Overseer Thal called an emergency session and had Marin's medical bay sealed before the meeting even began. You want to explain, Thal said, why a species we have known for less than a decade happens to possess a treatment for a disease that appeared on our worlds less than a month ago. The chamber was smaller than the one where Marin had first presented her trial results, but it felt more crowded, packed with board members and station administrators. And near the back, a Concord observer Nera didn't recognize, who had arrived on a fast courier that morning. Marin stood at the front, and for the first time since Nera had met her, she looked tired. Genuinely tired, the kind that showed in the set of her shoulders and the slight delay before she answered. I don't have a treatment for this specific disease, Marin said. I had a treatment method that has worked for other diseases, applied quickly to a new problem, using my own body as the source material because there wasn't time to wait for anything else. That's not the same thing as arriving with a pre-made cure. Some on this board believe it is precisely the same thing, Thal said. There is a theory circulating, Dr. O say, that this outbreak did not occur naturally. That it was introduced, deliberately, in order for your people to arrive with a solution already prepared and demonstrate your value to the Concord at a moment of maximum vulnerability for us. The chamber went very quiet. Nera felt her pulse in her throat. That's not true, she said, before she had decided to speak, and every head in the chamber turned toward her. She was not a board member. She was not supposed to speak in this session at all. She kept going anyway. I have been at Dr. Osei's side for 9 days. I watched her sequence this pathogen from nothing. I watched her use her own blood, because there was no recovered patient to draw from. If she had arrived with a prepared cure, Overseer, she would not have needed my brother. Your objectivity in this matter is understandably compromised, one of the board members said, not unkindly, but firmly. My objectivity has nothing to do with what I watched happen with my own eyes, Nera said, and was surprised by how steady her voice came out. Marin raised a hand slightly, a small gesture that asked Nera to let her take it from there, and Nera swallowed the rest of what she wanted to say. I understand why this looks the way it looks, Marin said to the chamber. I understand fear makes people look for a shape that explains what's happening to them, and a hidden human plot is a shape that fits, because it makes the danger something that can be blamed and stopped, instead of something that just happened, for no reason, to people who didn't deserve it. I can't prove a negative. I can't prove I didn't do something I didn't do. What I can do is offer you the only thing I have, which is everything. Full access to my ship's medical records. Full access to my own biological data, going back as far as our records go. Independent verification, by any Concord scientist you choose, on any world you choose, using any method you choose. If there is evidence of what you're describing, let your own people find it. I would rather be proven innocent by you than simply believed by you. Thal studied her for a long moment. You would allow that? Full access. I would insist on it, Marin said. Because the alternative is that this board spends the next month deciding whether to trust me, while people keep dying in the wards downstairs. I don't have a month. I don't think you do either. The session did not end cleanly. Nothing that large ends cleanly. But the sealed medical bay was reopened before the day was out, and a Concord scientific team was dispatched from the nearest research station to begin an independent review, and Marin went back to work with the particular grim focus of someone who had been reminded, all over again, exactly how much was still at stake. That night, Nera found her at the bench, not working on new patients, but sitting very still with an empty vial in her hand. I've given 4 donations in 9 days, Marin said quietly, before Nera could ask. I'm at the edge of what's safe for me to give again this week. And the demand for the serum has gone from 20 patients to over 300. I can't scale this from my own body, Nera. I never could. I think I knew that from the start and didn't want to say it out loud, because it was buying us time, and time was the only thing worth anything. What happens now? Marin looked at the vial for a long moment before answering. Now I have to tell you the actual answer. The one I should have led with 3 days ago. Marin stood in front of the review board one final time, and this time the chamber was full, standing room only, with the Concord Observer near the back joined now by 3 more, and a live feed running to every screen on Corvi Station, because word had gotten out that something important was about to be said. I owe this board a correction, Marin began. When I said I used my own body as the only available source material, that was true in the moment, but it left out something important, and I think leaving it out has cost us time we didn't need to lose. I want to fix that now. She brought up a display, not of gene sequences this time, but of a network map, thousands of small points of light connected by threads that spread and branched across something that looked, to Nera, almost like a living thing. My blood alone was never going to be enough, Marin said. One donor, however willing, cannot scale to a population in crisis. But I'm not the only source. Humanity has spent centuries building something we don't often think of as remarkable, because we grew up inside it and it feels ordinary to us. We share immune data. Not just between doctors and hospitals, but at a civilian level, continuously, across our entire settled population, through a network built specifically because plagues taught us, over and over again, that no single body and no single mind can carry the answer alone fast enough. Somewhere among the roughly 40 billion humans connected to that network, there are people whose immune systems have encountered pathogens close enough in structure to this fever that their donated data, not blood, just data, can be used to synthesize a treatment at scale, without needing to draw from any one person more than once. The chamber was silent in a way Nera had come to recognize, the specific silence of people absorbing something too large to respond to immediately. I should have requested access to that network on my first day here, Marin said. I didn't, because pulling from it means exposing a great deal of sensitive human medical data to an outside review process, and my instructions were to be cautious about that. I made a judgment call to solve this with what I had on hand instead, quietly, without asking permission for something bigger. I think that judgment call was wrong. It bought us 9 days, and it cost us the trust of half the station, and I would like to fix both problems at once, if you'll let me. What are you asking for? Thal said. Full Concord oversight of the request, Marin said. I'll submit the access petition through your board, not mine, so that every step is visible to the people it affects most. In exchange, I'm asking you to let me send it tonight, because every hour we debate this is an hour 300 people spend getting sicker. Thal looked around the chamber, at the anxious faces, at the live feed carrying this moment to every home on the station, at Nera standing near the front where she had stood through every session, uninvited and unwilling to leave. Send it, he said. The response came back in under 6 hours, which Nera would later learn was considered slow by human standards, and which felt to her like the fastest thing she had ever witnessed a bureaucracy accomplish. 240,000 anonymized immune profiles, gathered from a network spanning dozens of human worlds, cross-referenced against the fever sequence within minutes by processing power that made Marin's field equipment look like a child's toy. 11 near matches. 3 strong enough to synthesize a scalable treatment from, using station equipment, without drawing another drop from anyone. It took 4 more days to manufacture enough for the whole station. Nera spent those 4 days doing something she had not done in almost a month, which was sleep in her own bed, because there was nothing left for her to do at the medical bay except wait, and because Oving, sitting up now and complaining about missed schoolwork, needed someone to argue with him about it. On the 5th day, Nera stood in the same docking bay where she had first met Marin, waiting for the human ship to finish its final resupply before departure. The bay smelled ordinary again. No burnt sugar. Just recycled air and machine oil, the smell of a station getting back to being itself. Marin came down the ramp with her 2 cases, lighter now, and stopped when she saw Nera waiting. You didn't have to see me off, Marin said. I wanted to. Nera hesitated, then said the thing she had been turning over in her head for 4 days. Thiel Corval, from the ward, he told me something yesterday. He said in 40 years of practicing medicine, he has never seen a treatment developed and deployed at this scale in under 3 weeks. He said by every model he was trained on, it should have taken years. It should have, Marin agreed. We didn't have years. That's not really an answer. Marin smiled, small and tired and real. No? I suppose it isn't. She shifted the weight of her cases. You want the honest one. Always. We didn't get here because we are smarter than your physicians, or braver, or anything like that. Thiel Corval and his board were doing careful, patient medicine, built for a world where you usually have time to be careful. We got here because humans have been unlucky enough, often enough, across a long enough history, that we built systems assuming we'd never have time. We didn't invent something your people couldn't have invented. We just built the habit of moving before we were sure, because waiting until we were sure had killed too many of us in the past to trust it anymore. She looked at Nera steadily. I don't know if that's a comfort or not. I don't think it's meant to be one or the other. It's just what's true. Nera thought about the review chamber, about Thal's question, about the shape Fear had wanted to give this. She thought about the small correction Marin had made, in front of everyone, when she could have let the first version stand and no one would have known the difference. You could have kept that to yourself, Nera said. The part about the network. The part where you admitted you should have asked for it sooner. Nobody would have known. I would have known. Marin adjusted the strap of her case. And you would have found out eventually, and then this conversation would be a different one, and I'd rather have this one. The ship's departure klaxon sounded, soft and distant. Tell Oving to finish his schoolwork, Marin said, stepping toward the airlock. I will. And Nera. Marin paused at the threshold, looking back. Next time something like this happens, and something like this will happen again somewhere, to someone, it always does. Ask the question early. Don't wait for the person standing in front of you to decide on their own whether you deserve the whole truth. Ask. It's faster than waiting to find out. The airlock cycled closed behind her. Nera stood in the docking bay for a long while after the ship's running lights pulled away from the station and folded into the dark, thinking about a species that had built its habits around never having enough time, and about a brother sitting up in his own bed 3 corridors from here, arguing about schoolwork he no longer had an excuse to avoid. Then she turned and walked back toward the medical quarter, because there was still work to do, and because she had learned, over the last 2 weeks, that the work went faster when you stopped waiting to be sure before you started.